Welcome, welcome. I would like to start by saying it's a privilege and an honor to have this panel discussion, working with you all. And a background of myself, I had been a touring dancer, international touring dancer for about 12 years, um, at least 18 islands a year, and then continents. I've been a stage manager for like productions that could be like a black box theater or stages that are bigger than this room with props the size of this stage that's too big to fit here with casts of 200. And I would say this IBPOC tour has been kind of a mix of all of that. And I'd like everyone to get a taste of an understanding of what it's been like for everyone on this panel and hopefully inspire artists and venues and presenters to join on board or continue helping the IBPOC touring of artists. Yeah, so welcome. I will start off with saying, how about you let us know who you are with your own voice. Thanks, Kevin, but we're going to warm up the voices on the mics. Who you are and what has been your participation in the IBPOC Touring Network. Yeah. Well,
Testing, you can hear me? So I'm on this panel to give an artist perspective. So my role is I'm an artistic director for Artistic Collective, an ensemble of musicians, dance as well. And then I was also, our Coco Collective was one of the performing artists for the IBPOC Artist Touring Network. So that's my role. That's it?
For now.
My role was to be a venue. I am a building and all the stuff inside of it.
Yes, I was part of the performer for the IBPOC. I was presenting your work, and I'm Mafa. Yes.
I'm Charles. You met me earlier, and our group, When the Leaves Collective, we are the ones who created this touring network, and all the fun we've had in the process.
So we'll stay with Charles for a little bit. So the IBPOC Touring Network, I won't assume that everyone knows what it is. It's been, I'll say, birthed from Charles's writing and making it happen for letting IBPOC artists have the opportunity to tour Ontario, Canada, and just make it more accessible for those artists because we know there's some barriers when it comes to IBPOC performers, right? Getting an opportunity. So Charles, just so people have an understanding of what it takes, could you give us an idea of your steps? And from what I know from working with a number of producers and whatnot, I know basic steps. There's securing venues, selecting artists from their application, which is the application process, and pairing, programming them, who goes where, when, how. Yeah.
It has been a lot of work. I can't deny that. And part of it comes from my involvement with other conferences like the Prismatic Festival, the Empty Spaces Impact Festival, where a number of Indigenous Black people of color artists have come together for those festivals, happy to perform, but very concerned about why is it only at these festivals run by people of color that bring them into Ontario or Halifax and so on. And a number of conversations that I've had over the years sort of said, well, what is the problem here? What is the issue? A number of issues. One is people being presenters, and more particularly being aware of the quality of art. Right? and looking at art that comes out of indigenous people, people of color, black folk, as being, what was that? I don't get it. I don't see how it stands up against what I'm familiar with. So it was clearly a barrier that had to be broken around how one saw the art. The second, equally important, is to be able to demonstrate that art. We had to have a forum in order to do it. And we had to set it up in a way that would open the door to where the barriers were, the interests of not just artists, but also presenters, to say, we really want to do this, but we're just not sure how. So we hired a consulting group, Bespoke Collective, and they did 2 research reports for us. One was, do people want this? And the quick answer is yes. Sorry, something in my throat. The second was, how does it operate? Can someone get me some water? And basically, what would the structure mean and how would we deliver on it? So in doing that, we also had to look at the work in and of itself. And so what we did is we invited video showcasing from artists. We would put out a call, and artists like Martha or Coco would send in their work, and we would curate it and say, okay, out of the 50-odd applications, we can only show about 30, right? Because time, dollars, etc. Whom do we want to choose? And we make that selection, and we get back to the artist. It's something very different about what we do, different than other presenter showcases. We don't charge the artists to showcase their work. In fact, we pay them. They're performing. So why should they be paying us for their performance? We should be paying them. Not only do we pay them, we invite them to the showcasing, which is also part of a conference where they're able to meet presenters. So, for example, 2 years ago, we worked in collaboration with Fall for Dance North. We continue to work at Fall for Dance North. Now we have an opportunity working with Luminato. And again, those are the video showcases that we're able to show videos to a room of presenters from, well, Luminatos from around the world. Fall for Dance North tends to be from around the world as well. And out of that, presenters say, hey, I'm really interested. Thank you very much. I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that, etc. Then with the touring network, the actual getting people on the road to go to places, we reach out to people like Sam at the registry, Leslie at Guelph Dance, Brian in West Bend, Campbellford. And this year we began to work with Nyata Nyata in Quebec. And we say to them, we have some artists, here's what we can do. We can get them on the road to you. In other words, we can pay the artist fees. We can help cover with their accommodation, travel, and per diems, etc. Can you provide the stage? And we work together on how we promote this work. And in this year in particular, we changed a bit more because we also asked local presenters, like at the registry or in Guelph or in West Bend, who are local IBPOC artists that might also be interested from your community. So it's not just us bringing people out of Toronto, it's us trying to connect with local communities as well. And we were really surprised that the quality, I shouldn't say surprised, we were happy to see quality of work in these other areas. And we were really happy that the presenters that we were involved in have now formed a sort of community where we talk to each other rather regularly in terms of setting up the next steps and looking at how do we improve on where we were last year, what do we need on our part. And I have to say very quickly, and I'll wrap up on this, when I say setting it up is a lot of work, running it is a ton of work. Working in different venues. Julia tends to be the major production manager, coordinator, God knows whatever else she does to make this happen. Saying to artists, this is what we can do. So the responsibility is threefold. It's on us as the coordinator. It's on the venues who are presenting the work to make sure their space, that we understand what their space can offer in terms of technical capacities, et cetera, And then with the artists to say, here's what we can offer to you. Can you bring this to the stage? In other words, they would have to give something as well. It's not just, here's a free ticket, go perform there. It's, well, you want the video? We'd love to have the video. It will cost us $7,000 to do a video. We can't afford it. Is that okay with you? Right? Because we have to look at budgets. And this brings me to the last thing around arts councils. We applied for Canada Council for our next 2 years. Thankfully, Heritage has been very supportive, and so we're looking at 2 to 3 years from them as we go forward. Their comments back to us were about the quality of the work. They said it was not good enough. And I'm here saying, wow, we are presenting such high quality artists. You gotta be kidding me. And it just goes to that barrier. I've been involved in the arts from the 80s on. And I remember when I was involved with Black Theatre Canada and when Vera Kudjoe gave it up because she was tired of that battle of people not understanding how Black folk create, present, perform, work. And so we still have battles with the arts councils around the quality of this work, which means we have battles with the jurors whom we don't know, one of whom said that the work is tokenistic. Tokenistic. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, am I live? Oh, you leave it at that. That's a lot. That's a lot for us to just. I'm gonna have a lot of questions, and I'm gonna have to monitor this time, but we'll see how we go. You talk about the many things, but I want to touch on Mafa and Coco as selected artists for this touring network. What were the steps that you had to take from, we know you applied, but from hearing, okay, you're selected to go tour, that moment to, okay, I'm back from the tour. What does it take for you and the artists that you work with to embark on this? From this time they say, Martha, here's your dates.
Yes. I must say, like, to begin first, like, I've always going to be say, like, thanks to Charles and thanks to the committee that, came up with this brilliant idea. And I don't know what to say. Like, I will say it's like they heard our cries, they heard our thinkings, they heard our, like, okay, am I still an artist, or am I still a creative artist, or am I a working artist, and they came up with a responsive system. I'll come back to that. Like, when I heard that I was selected, for me, it was amazing, like, it was so amazing and important for me, because I felt like, again, okay, I can present my work. My work is there, and the process for me of applying, it was so interesting and simple. Simple in a way that there was no barriers. It was just submitting the application. Hi, how are you? It's like, how home we are in Africa, just meet. Hi, how are you? I shake your hands and then we go. You're my friend. I don't have to question anything. You said you are an artist? Okay, let we go, we move. Present your work. That's how I felt. I felt home from the application itself, and then working with the process itself. When I looked at the dates, I decided that, in order for me to be able to work the process, I will have to have 2 casts. I made 2 casts so that, in a way that the cast can always be responsive to any challenges that might arise, and in that way, it helped me a lot to be able to accommodate the process, because I wanted to be part of the process, because I believed in what this idea and what this journey was taking us, and because as Chelsea was saying, like, and also, how can I put, like, I also like to thank also the presenters for their bravery. Like, it's so hard to present our work, especially when we become a working artist. What I mean by working artist is that we no longer create work that it's needed by presenters, because presenters mostly they want work that is hyper or is accommodating the today audience or the today generation, you know. And some of us, we are parents. That time of 60% of our time has been taken by life. 40% is dedicated to art. And now how do we balance that? You know, and now you go to Fall for Dance and all of them, they're like, nope, the work is no quality. But I'm like, I've been working with you for 20 years. So what do I become now? Now I become a museum. You know, and now I'm fighting with my kids. I'm like, you know, I used to split. Really? So what happened? Ash, baby girl. time, you know. So, but then Charles and Sam, when they came in and they were like, guys, we're still here. For, you know, for me, it built that assurance. It built that growth that art never dies, we grow. You know, it also accommodates us who are working artists. We're no longer creative artists, because creative artists, you create now, you present tomorrow. Working artists, you produce, you know. It brings, now I'm secure to go home, meaning that I can be my farmer Kubalo with the gumboots and the pantsula without fearing that what the audience is going to think, because I know the place where Sam say, Mafa, come and present your work, the people who are coming there, they are ready to see what is going to be presented, not they're coming to judge and say, oh, okay, so what is this, Toronto? Now, you know, no, thank you.
Testing. Okay. So when I was selected, so just to give a little bit of backstory, I am an artist that is project-based. I'm not a full-time artist. I have a salary position. I'm in academia. I do other things. So the artistic collective that I run, we all have different commitments because we have university, we have jobs, different schedules in our jobs. So when we were selected, because this is the first tour for our collective, I'm an artist that creates work in non-proscenium spaces, right? So I decided, and I was encouraged to take something that I developed, so thank you, Charles, to bring it to the network. So I was like, let's just put our hat in the ring. And then when we got selected, I'm like, okay, now this is real. This is real. Now I got to make this happen. So from the people management and organizing the schedules to get rehearsals, because we have to rehearse in the evening, to the logistics of taking our work, which was debuted in a museum space, and then expanding and remounting this work so that it could be for a stage for dance presenters. So that took some time in the development. And then when we went to tour, are we at that question yet? Yeah. So when we went to tour each site, it's, for me, of course, all of the labor of doing all of the logistics and all of the planning and the meetings and having to be on top of my communications and giving things back and being responsive, because that's important for us as artists. We can't let that fall to the wayside because someone else depends on our responses so that they can do their organizing and so that the venue can do their organizing as well. So I would say when we went to each venue, it was a negotiation, because the work that we had this year, because I have a number of musicians and props, and then myself doing the choreography and movement, entrances, exits. We also had a video. We have live musicians, so the instrumentation and transport of our instruments, all of those logistics are very important to the integrity of the work. So we had to negotiate with each venue. One venue, we couldn't use our video, and it was part of the storytelling of the piece. So then we had to pivot, and if we're going to do that date, how are we going to present the work? So we had to make some adjustments. So that means the artist has to be adaptable and flexible and know how to pivot, right? So we have to negotiate, and we only would be aware of what's happening at the venue on the day of the tech. That's the first time we enter to see entrance and exits and things like that. So I had to like re-strategize sometimes. My cast, some members weren't always available for the dates. And so I had to like bring in guest artists and things like that to pivot around. So I had my full cast for specific parts. And then, yeah, just navigate back home, rehearsing to make the piece work. And because each venue has an audience set up in a specific way, my work has an audience engagement component and a community engaged component. So I had to kind of strategize on how that would be presented in each space as well. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, I have a short. Is it me? Yeah. Okay. I have a short. I think it's a short follow up. Just because I had both of y'all speak before I go to Sam. What's the size of y'all's casts? Like ideal size?
So the collective has about maybe 8 or 9 people, myself included. I think at one point, one of the performances I may have had maybe 4 or 5 musicians and then myself as the dancer. So I had to scale it down.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, yes. Me, I was alternating between 3 and 4.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And what does pivoting these dancers and spaces mean for your artwork? Because I don't know how your rehearsals work, if you have extra space and all of that, but like what does that mean for you to pivot in preparation?
I think for me, how I got to select the dancers, the artists, or how I got to invite. I went to the artists that I've already had worked with before. So the material, they were kind of like familiar. Like Polga, when he came in, it was different to how I worked with him than how I worked with Aisha and Michael. Because of with Polga, we'll just talk. Because of we from the similar country and we are neighbors. So it was more like choreography for us was more on talking. So I'll tell him, you did this and this and this and this and that. Oh, you know that? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Mafa, you should. Okay, let's go. Let's run it. Yes. Oh, yeah. That's it. We go, you know. And then when I work with Michael and Aisha, I had to go and process it and program it. And so it was kind of like it was more like I already, most of the time, like I have like a base where artists, they enter. It's like where we both, all of us, we find like an entrance point. And then once we find that entrance point, from there, it's up to you where you go. And then I think that's where I could always it was easier for me to work with whoever comes in because of that meetup spot.
So the ensemble, we've worked together for many years, but like I said, it was the first tour. So they had to understand that we are not coming to do one performance a specific way like we normally would and then just disperse. So that we are collaborating to develop the work, and people have specific roles within the ensemble's work. And if someone was missing, then I need to figure out strategically who could I bring in that has the strength to pick up easily and adapt to an ensemble work. Because in my work, the soundscape was the musicians. We did not have any live recording or anything like that. The musicians are the soundscape for the entire piece. So people had to know the rhythms, they had to know the transitions, like it's a seamless process. So if I had to replace a cast member or someone wasn't there, other people had to kind of, hold the work. And then there's also performance cues they needed to know from what I was doing, because I'm telling a continuous story throughout the work. So that means everybody has to come together and collaborate and be on point.
That many people.
That many people.
Okay.
Yes.
I find it interesting, the contrast in cast size and like the different processes it takes to rejigger at possibly maybe short notice or long notice. So good job on y'all, because I've seen the versions. Thank you. Sam, What did you call yourself again? A space?
I'm a building.
You're a building. Okay. I know you're much more than a building, and if you'll know anything about Sam, he's absolutely hilarious just by existing. So his
I'm actually being funny
yeah,
right now.
like functionally funny. Like you get stuff done and he's like just, it's yeah. So for you, a lot of people don't understand the venue, meaning the artists, often the producers sometimes have more hands off, and audiences come into a theater, watch, and leave. Could you let us know, as a venue, what it means for you when you negotiate or discuss with Charles, where your dates and what goes on from there?
Thanks, Julia. I'm gonna answer your question eventually, but I wanted to start by saying, I think, because I've thought about this a lot, the venue exists at the intersection between the artist and capitalism, right? And art and capitalism are strange bedfellows. I think as I continue to evolve my understanding of art, I think art is something that humans just do, the way that fish swim and birds fly. And when we try to, and I'm not saying, please don't interpret this as me saying we shouldn't pay artists, but there's something about the transactional nature of presenting that I increasingly have questions about, and how it relates to capitalism, colonialism, and the systems of commodification of things. I could talk to you about all the details around tech riders and marketing materials and scheduling and technicians and box office and everything. I could talk to you about how, as the venue, I'm the one who's home. So if you forgot something at home, I'm the one. Sometimes artists come to town and feel like they don't want to trouble the venue, and they end up running around along in McQuaid trying to find a thing that I have. I work hard as a presenter, though, to say, I'm with you on this. Please come to me and ask me for stuff. And so I think the greatest resource that we need to cultivate is the elasticity and the patience. Patience is probably the wrong word. Maybe it implies irritation, but the grace and understanding and the participatory energy to say, we're in this together and we got you, and we're going to find what you need. Because increasingly I feel this tension. What my colleagues have spoken of a lot today is, I need this thing, this commodified thing, and it's got to have this many dancers, and it's got to have this video, and it's got to have these lights. And I don't mean to trivialize the art at all. But what really fills up our cup at the registry in the last few years is residencies. Because residencies are more of a sense, creative residencies are more of a sense of, you're an artist, and I think you have something valuable, you have a perspective to offer my community, and I want to help the community encounter that in as many ways as I can. We're going to do some kind of show and tell. We're going to do some kind of workshop. We're going to have some kind of sharing. There's going to be money exchanged at the door. On the front of money, Charles, I have to thank you so much for sending me dancers and paying them, because that is a massive part of the equation, and it checks off that capitalist box that makes me, probably not to the extent it needs to, but it frees us up to do more of what I think are the really interesting things. My big thing that I wanted to talk about today and to shine a light on, and that we talk about at the registry a lot, is production. Production, I believe, I'm the Lorax, I speak for the trees. Everyone needs oxygen, right? And in the same way, everybody needs production. And so we can discuss all we want about what the art is, what it means, and all of that stuff. And at the end of the day, as long as it's not crossing very basic lines, I'm there for it. I'm really just there to make sure that you're lit, and we can hear you, and you're warm enough, and you feel safe enough and comfortable enough to do what it is you do. Because the thing that hurts my heart as a presenter producer, okay, artists, I think it's their job to float away from the earth, to fly up as high as they can in the stratosphere and get as long a view as they can, to see into the past, to look into the future, and to give some kind of update from up there. But it's our job as technicians and producers, and I see you, and I see all the wonderful people who are in the booth responding to last-minute requests to turn this off, turn this on. Why isn't this mic working? Can I have some light here? Generally, we only get noticed when something goes wrong. But it's our job to tether those wonderful, beautiful, lighter-than-air artists to the earth, because we don't want them to float away forever. And that implies tension. I'm tethering you to the earth. But I hope that tension doesn't feel like holding you back. It feels more like we are a connected pair, and we rely on each other.
He just dropped the mic. So with that being said, how does that fluidity work if within the scope of what you've experienced so far with the IBPOC touring network in terms of that tethering and that maneuvering within your space, within the folks that work with you? I see Jazz in the audience who I've worked with. They're amazing. Yeah.
I think I'm all for taking apart or being willing to interrogate and investigate this apparatus that we're engaged with. I'm not 100% certain about this, but I've heard this thing we do, presenting, is actually an artifact of wealthy folks from Europe who would try to impress their friends by bringing artists into like their parlor room. Look how rich and connected I am. I know these fancy artists. You're going to come to my party and be impressed by my very cosmopolitan taste. But then, thanks Industrial Revolution, we figured out we could commodify that. We could build mega parlors. We could charge ticket prices, right? But things are changing. The cost of labor is increasing. The notion of wraparound care is becoming more standard, and so it should be. A smart person once said to me, a contract replaces trust. And I look at a lot of my PAC colleagues, and I'm kind of part of that system, and I see just how rigid the contract is, and I see how people are going back to it so often to resolve issues. I've had to defend my position a lot of I would rather not look at the contract until there's something we really can't sort out between the two of us. I would rather try to proceed on trust. And so the one thing I'll offer in response to your question is and I know I was the one who kind of said, I need the information by mid-August so I can put it in my brochure. Because that's part of this system, this tyranny of the September to June presenting season that I have to try to observe, right? I just want to say for the record, I'm cool with blowing that off. And I'm up for holding up to examine all the parts of this thing that we're doing, because again, I'm a privileged person for whom the system has worked, and so I know it's a loaded comment when I say the system is working for me, but I also believe that there are good parts of it, but on the same note, there's parts of it that I think aren't working, and I would welcome a fulsome discussion that zooms in on some of those things and says, do we really need to do that? Do we really need to do this? Do we need to have this packaged thing that I'm going to sell? Or can we frame this as more of an invitation to hang out and learn from each other?
I absolutely appreciate that answer, and just gives us the feeling that there's more to what's been expected of. It's more than just a cookie cutter, this is what it is, because I'm sure many have experienced the difference between going to the National Ballet and the lights blink and say, get in your seats, else you're going to miss the show. Sorry you bought your ticket. Versus, we're going to start when the audiences that we know are there. And being able to maneuver with each other in space when something happens and be there present in the moment, especially knowing that IBPOC art is so diverse and also often very live. And you never really know what happens. I've seen both of your performances where, like they mentioned, there is a moment where people come onto the stage and join them. People joined without even being prompted. So things happen like that. And then, as you mentioned, the lights, like, okay, we guess we give more lights now. And, so I appreciate that perspective and that focus on fluidity and being in the moment with the work and working toward making this vision live up to what its intention is. So I take it back to Charles on that. Based on your hopes for the tour, when the buzz hit you, can you name some of these successes that have come out of it that you had hoped for and that you didn't even expect?
Yeah, I mean, obviously one success is that we've been running this for 4 years. 2 years we've been able to put artists on tour. We have partners that for those live tours for 2 years and have added one. And that's really quite successful. Other successes is, as Coco has indicated, as Mafa, is their first time touring. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, Win the Leads, we've toured once to Atlantic Canada years ago, and the work behind that is absolutely amazing to, as Coco was saying, most of us, we work other lives, other things and so how do you round up your artists? What's the spirit between them that they are coming together with a common understanding about why we are doing this as a community, right? As a community, not as just Win the Leads curates and, they go off and do their thing. No. We have to have conversations about, all right, we have this opportunity. You have to understand we can't select the dates because we don't run the venues. We obviously have good people with us so we can begin to negotiate and have a conversation with them about what dates will work. Or as Sam said, if we can't get our work ready for their season programming, and part of that is because we get funding rather late, or they're still ready to accommodate and say, we'll do it anyway and fit it in somehow. And that I think is a really amazing success, to say that you get venues who will say, yeah, we've got our season, it's already there, this didn't make it in, but we've got these dates where there's spurum. Can you talk about that with the artists, and that, I think, and the willingness of artists to say, all right, I would have preferred that date, but I can see that's not possible. Or as Coco was saying, I have to go back and see who's available for me to make this happen, because they clearly want to make it happen. So there's stuff that goes on where I think, as a venue would say, as Sam would say, the things that we don't necessarily see when we say, the registry. The same with the artists. And it's not just about the rehearsals. It's about, how do they get from Toronto to Montreal in the winter? Yeah. And how do you go from one venue where you have lighting and video and other things to another venue that has absolutely no lighting whatsoever? It's a Sunday afternoon in a quiet community center somewhere in Campbellford, Ontario, but there's the space. And what I also want to just end on that one with these is the appreciation of community that comes to see the work, right? So in those venues, whether it's in Campbellford or whether it's in Kitchener, or whether it's in Guelph, whether it's in Quebec, the communities become so excited. And when both Coco and Mafa, their work does engage people. They, come on, get down here with us. It does that. it does that, and people are really willing to kind of get engaged in that way, which I think is really very is a big success because it teaches about the arts practice. And we've begun to offer workshops outside of just the performance to really have an artist do a community engaged activity. So we're hoping, as Sam was saying, that we can begin to build on residencies, that we can say, this is what I hope, hey, Martha, you got a week? We can send you down. You know, here's the thing. Yeah, you got these performances, but you're also going to connect with this dance workshop and that school and, you know, this community opportunity, et cetera. I mean, like that, because, you know, we need to really get people to not just understand the art, but to appreciate it, to love it, and to want it more.
Like, I love the mic drops every time they're done. I wanna lean into that idea of expanding the tour in that manner and having the artists spend time in the communities. You touched on it as well, Sam, and I know you had some workshops in your space over the past 2 years with the IBPOC tour and what it means for the community. What does it mean for you all as artists to have this opportunity to probably spend a couple days at the tour location versus dropping in for the same day tech, same day performance and leaving?
Well, for me, being I am a community engaged artist, it will help me to expand the other hats that I wear. I could build a relationship with the community. I can meet new people. They can experience and live the art, not just come and be a passive spectator just to witness the art. So I think that would be great if there was like dance workshops, or for me, like we could have did musical workshops. We could have expanded and did a couple of things. If we were able to have the funding and the support around that. Because I think for me, if that could lead to another collaboration where I have to apply separately to get the grant to do the community engagement, we got to build our audience somehow, and then we got to build a relationship with the community. So I think that would help for them to understand who we are and the art that we're offering, and I think that would be a positive thing. Given
your schedule in life, what does that mean for your schedule in life?
Yes, okay. So that means the scheduling in advance is very important for me to do that, because I would have to take vacation time. Not only for myself, but also for the selected people who would work with me to do the engagement.
Yes. Yes. I think for me, or like in general, I think this will be a blessed concept, because of this will be the true meaning of a working artist. Because of what I've realized, the definition of working artist in South Africa, when you say you're a working artist, it means that you work art, the art pays you. I teach, I choreograph, I dance, I do this, I do seminars, I come to Canada, I'm a working artist. What does that mean? I work at Tim Hortons. 60% of my time, 40% I'm an artist. But then when what Charles has just said, that hope with Sam says, that will cut 60% of my Tim Hortons. Because now, being a father now, I know now that 60% I'm going to get it doing workshops. I'm going to get it doing teaching. I'm going to get it maybe doing something in the art. And I know it's consistent, because the problem is that there's no consistency. That's why we have to go to Tim Hortons to find that consistency. But if I know that, Charles has secured me, there's a IBPOC coming with the tours, and then Sam, there's a residency. I don't need to go to Tim Hortons. I can cover that here, and then when I finish here, I go there, I perform. I made a goat. Why do I want? Then now I'm an artist. Now I can raise my family without stress. I can live life. I can live art. That's how, we've been saying, we are an artist. True artists, you live art. You don't separate art. You don't separate art from life. Just because we want to chase capital. The capital is there, Yes.
So just when we put this out on the live stream, we're hoping that Tim Hortons will sponsor. Um, and I mean, it's a thing to think about. It's important to hear this. I find I've had the privilege of being a working artist, where that's all I did. It also meant I was never in one country for longer than a week, which has its ups and downs. And like you mentioned, it will have your way, but it will make you take care of your family. It may make your collective more bountiful and consistent in that way. And I want to lean into that a little bit in terms of you had a live workshop in your performances, and you've mentioned the things that you've worked with your dancers and maneuvering. Because I think I saw your launch as well in Young Artscape. Yes. Based on your hopes when you applied for this tour, what are the successes that you have felt coming out of it?
Whoa. If I start with the success and the hope, what time is it? We have to add more another day. So I'll cut it. For me, wow, this has been beyond my capacity, like my thinking, what I was expecting, because of, I thought, it was going to be a key. We're just going to, we're just going to do basic, done, and then we they go. But, when it add on tours and it add on theaters and, I was like, okay, so then I'm back to being a creative artist again, because of now I feel, 40s again, I'm like, yes, I'm ready, let me go show, the world. And what was the most success about this process was that the combination of the artists, it was amazing, because of sometimes we talk about diversity, but there's no visibility. You don't see diversity. You don't feel it. You hear about it. But with the IBPOC, sometimes we see the weight, but we don't see it in the physical space. But with the process, the network itself, when it says IBPOC, it was IBPOC, the name, and then you see the physicality of the people, and then you can touch them. Because of they were bringing their own art. They were not bringing, I think that's Fiji, or maybe it's water, or maybe it's a glass. No, it's just water. You come to see the work. You come to see the soul. And that was the peaceful with my art, because of, even with the people, my artists, the dancers that they were working with, Paul Guy and them, he was like, Martha, I've never felt like a dancer. I'm like, what do you mean? We've been dancing. I'm like, yo, my brother, I can just come in and do me. I'm like, what do you mean? There's no stress of, we rehearse, we sit, we drink, we chat, and then we meet with, presenters, we meet with Chili. Cool sisters. Cool sisters. We show up, we do our thing, understandable. They like, what someone said, trust. They trust that we're going to bring the work. We said we're going to bring the work, and they trust. They didn't question how we were doing the process. They trust that the work is going to be delivered, and we delivered it. And that was the success. And the success also of going to those communities is that it just reminds me that, being so much distracted by the metropolitan in Toronto that, I forgot about people, because of, as we grow, we move away. Like 1 hour away from Toronto is far. I can't go there, it's too far. no, taking the bus, But before we used to run, no problem, no stress. In and out, I'll come back at 2 o'clock morning, no. Now we understand because we have families and kids. But because of when I went into Kitchener, when I went into Montreal, and even we went to Walker. Yes, work with this. Oh, we met with the people that I used to dance with them 20 years ago in Toronto. They were like, are you Muff? I'm like, who you? I'm like, yes, remember I used to come and take your class. I'm like, what? And then for me, all of us were into some of them, even the theater presenters, like the theater people in the theater, they even knew Polga. They're like, are you Polga? Yes, I've been dying to meet you so much. Oh God, they even forget that they are the one who were presenting us. We were to be on their message, but no, they were so happy. It shows this was like, there's no other present. This was beyond our success. This was beyond our blessings. Yes.
Testing? Testing. Okay. I would say one success is that, and most people know me when I say this, when I perform, I'm apologetically myself. So this touring network was an opportunity for the collective to collaborate and to create its own work and to unapologetically share who we are and to share our cultures, and feeling safe to do that. Because for me, I was very vocal years ago about how presenters do not understand who we are, nor my work. That I didn't even want to even bother creating something to get into this rigmarole of having to put it on a stage for someone to see the work, criticize it, to legitimize who I am, and that my art and artistry is worth anything. I know that it's worth something. I have been highly recognized for my artwork. That's not on a stage for 25 years. So to put my work on a stage and then to tour it around, and the most success was the audience response. Because we were trying to always break that fourth wall, that they're not just to sit there and just look at us like they're looking at a TV screen. I got into the audience. I wanted to activate the audience. And then I wanted to take them on a transatlantic journey of storytelling. That we did. What I would have liked to happen is to hear their feedback, right? So I could tell by the responses in each space, they were completely, like, they loved what they saw and they had so many questions, but we didn't have a lot of time to really engage and answer those questions. But the biggest success was the audience response. Yeah.
It just means that you're gonna have to go back in these places, and hopefully they say, come back with, ideally with Women Leaves Collective, but hopefully it has expanded it so that it keeps growing the IBPOC community as well, and having that opportunity of authentic exposure in terms of your artwork. Sam, I've worked in your space. I actually really love working in your space. I would love to hear you speak to other spaces, a venue, your space, and give them an idea of what to expect when they become part of the IBPOC touring network. However you deem that, what to expect, whether it's with communication, not communication, but like interaction and programming with artists. Like, what would you say to the venues who are curious about joining on? You've had 2 years experience with the IBPOC touring network. What would you say would be Words of advice.
Like, what advice would I give other venues that want to participate in the IBPOC Artists Touring Network?
Perhaps, and your experience, drop it in there too.
I think I would advocate for, and I know that this is absolutely unfathomable to a lot of larger venues, but we've talked about it a little bit. Just like to have you there longer. I'd like to have you there sooner. I'd like to visit. I'd like to have in-person visits. I'd like for you to come to Kitchener and not just come see the space, but let's do something in it. Let's, I don't know, run a rehearsal or even have like, we have a wonderful theater company. You mentioned them, Empty Space. They do a thing called Tell. Let's have like, I have this colleague, Claire, and she's like an elf from the Lord of the Rings. She's like a mystical, magical kind of creature, and she runs this old converted town hall in I can't remember the name of the town, small town not too far from Kingston. And when people perform at her space, they are like, what strange world did I just come from? I feel like I passed through the Looking Glass or went through the wardrobe and I was in Narnia for a couple days, because her venue sponsor is a person who has a cottage down by the lake, and that's where you stay. The food is it's like a 5-star chef that she knows personally, who prepares, like talks to you about what it is you are interested in, but also introduces you to some things from that community. Kitchener can be a little bit of a elbows out kind of town sometimes, and so as a presenter, what I think about and what I might very generally recommend to other venues is, I'm going to just skip over all the part about the tech rider and that, because yeah, that has to happen and that's important. But I think just think more broadly about hosting people and embrace that concept of hosting. The same way, I might have mentioned this before, like if you're throwing a house party, it's your house. And if you don't expect people to bring their own napkins, you provide what you anticipate they will need. And you maybe meet with them a little bit in advance so they can feel comfortable in your venue. And to engage in more of a process like that, I think of it like R&D for the human condition. We have some people with some compelling perspectives, and we need that information to add to our own pool of knowledge. But I like the idea of an exchange as well. Kitchener, I talk about Kitchener a lot like it's a person, and Kitchener is like it has a bug up its butt a little bit about experts coming in and teaching workshops. Especially, I'm sorry everybody, Toronto. Kitchener has a little bit of an inferiority complex about Toronto. And so the idea that a big flashy Toronto artist is going to come to Kitchener and start telling us what's what. Whereas if you can frame it a little bit more, we had a great residency with Andrea Pena, who came to us as a result of a collaboration with Danse de Rue de Québec. And it was a residency swap. And so she had some concepts that she wanted to develop, and she said, I just need bodies. They can be dancer bodies, they can also be writers or painters. They should be some kind of artists, and they should be willing to move, but I will work with anybody. And that was so much fun, because I feel like I got to have a fun week connecting her with playmates and playthings. And that is something that really excites me. I've learned this about myself, is that one of the things that really electrifies me is when like a musician shows up and they forgot their accordion. And like it's 4 p.m. and they go on at 8 and they need an accordion. And I got to start calling everybody who has an accordion. These are the wonderful moments where we show up for each other. And we talked about this a little bit in our workshop session, Bremily and Kate. Showing up, I think, is the secret sauce. So the more we can show up for each other, not just literally but figuratively, and in many ways on all perceivable spectrums, I think is the best way forward. And the money side of things, I mean, come on, everybody. Dance is not how anybody's going to get rich. I program dance because I want to become wealthy and eventually take over the earth. And I think that dance and selling tickets to dance events is the way I'm going to do that, is not something anybody has ever said. So, you know, get over it.
I mean, in some cases, I will be the devil's advocate and beg to differ because dancing did pay my way through 2 degrees, but I think that's not the same story for everyone. So, like, acknowledging that there's gonna have the 10%, maybe 5% who are able to do that, get rich off of choreographing for Disney. I don't know. It's not the 95%.
You're also touching a little bit on the difference between art and entertainment, right?
Yep.
And I think that's a Venn diagram where there's a fair amount of overlap. An excellent example of one is often an excellent example of the other, but they're not aligned on all fronts.
Capitalism much? You mentioned it. You talked on sponsorship and residencies, and I feel like that's a bright light that I feel like this touring network will allow to exist for not just Win in the Leaves Collective and venues, but also for artists. Because I feel like a lot of these spaces don't get exposed to the art that is being brought there, and it opens their eyes to greater opportunities. So big up to you, Charles, for making this, like, launching this off. I do want to come back to you, Charles, before we take it to, we have some questions in the chat. When you ask an artist to come to these dates, I'm going to bring this to each person, just say it. What do you expect from the artist? And we're just gonna just say,
That's
like,
a really good. That's a really good question. Part is we see the video, we see the explanation of the work as they present a document to us. We see their cast, and I go around, I watch work. So when when Coco gets accepted in Mafa, I've seen their work. I Kasha Dance, I've seen the work, right? And so I have a sense of, I know the individuals who are, and I say as individuals, not just as artistic directors, as dancers and musicians, etc. I know them as people, so there is that sense of trust. And without that, I don't think we can really move forward, because in essence, I don't know what Sam has to offer. We're learning it. Guelph doesn't have a venue, so they have to find a venue. West Bend is really focused on music, not on dance, and they had to find a venue. Right? Nyata Nyata just set itself up as a studio, but I know Zab's work. I've seen it a number of times. An opportunity presented itself. How do I say to Coco, hey, can we work together around this? Coco knows Zab as well. I remember we were at a performance of Win the Leaves, and Coco sitting down saying, wow, Zab wants us in Montreal. That's how excited she was, because Zab is just one of these phenomenal artists who does a lot of work to promote Afro-diasporic arts practices as both a philosopher and as a dancer and as a mover and shaker. So when we invite an artist in, and I think we have to do more of this as we go forward, is I think we were, initially, we may have not understood what we needed to be able to say. I have to be honest about that. And what I mean by that is, I don't know what each venue can and cannot do. So we're now asking those questions, right? Because we have to be upfront with the artists. With the artists as well, we have to be more upfront to say, we're a small organization. We don't have a full-time staff person to begin with. we operate, this is project funding, so there's no guarantee that next year will happen. And then, of course, we have certain fees that we would like to offer, and then what we can offer, right? And our fees, I have to be honest, our fees do run above what the Canadian Dance Assembly recommends, because we think those fees are just too low. They're just too low. So when we look at a group, we try to say, we want to make sure you have some money for rehearsal time, not just getting on the stage and performing. How do you get ready? How do you get ready? So we usually offer more than what the CDA would offer. And then we have to get into the nitty-gritty of travel and so on, which, you know, for me is really a challenge, because we have to make sure that, you know, as I say, traveling in winter, so we don't want to move it out of winter. But since we did it in winter, how does it happen? You know, some people, I mean, one artist had 40 pounds of sand to transport. No car. No car. Thankfully, our producer said, I'll drive you. That's what we gave, right? And got that artist there with her 40 pounds of sand to be able to perform. Conversation with Coco around her drums, her group's drums, and going to Montreal, travel between Toronto and Montreal to make sure these drums are treated as sacredly as they need to be. You know, not just inanimate objects. They're part of the spirit of that performance. There's a relationship between the drummer and that drum. So saying, you can just use what they have at Nyata, well, you know. And Coco responsibly said, well, my drummer, this is his drum. Right? Going to a cold drum is not necessarily what's needed. So those are things that we really need to understand more as we go forward. But I think the bottom line is it's the trust that when we chose artists that we had for the past 2 years, A, I've seen their work. B, they go through a competitive process anyway, and they get selected. C, then they get made an offer. And then the offer isn't just, you're going to go next week to here or there. We're going to have to negotiate where and when and how and dates and times and what you need to be responsible for and what Wyndham Lees needs to be responsible for and what the venue needs to be responsible for. All within an atmosphere of let's trust each other and make this happen, because sometimes we may have to make certain compromises on things. You know, figuring out travel and accommodation and per diems, oh my God, that's just a nightmare. You know, how many people you're traveling with, who's going by car, who's going by train, who's going by, you know, whatever. It changes the formulas. It changes the formulas. So all that stuff is around, let's trust each other to work this through as best we can, knowing, and the interesting thing about working as calling it IBPOC is not just, we all come out of community where we have known the barriers that we have faced as artists. And so when an opportunity like this presents itself, we're ready to work with it as best we possibly can, because we know this will push us forward, right? Without it, nothing happens. It may not be exactly what we want, but it's something more than what we had. And if we can make it work so that we're comfortable, then let's do it. Until we can get those funders to say, this is high quality work. This work should be supported. This work is speaking to what art is in Canada today. This work brings forward. I saw Martha do his boot dancing, and I know some people, I've seen boot dancing before many times, and I wonder, you know, people, what the hell are these people doing, these gum boots on, and not recognizing the history of where that came from. That men in diamond mines, to entertain themselves and to bring forward the spirit, danced with boots because they had to wear the boots in those mines. And if you ever see it, his work, others, amazing stuff. Right? So how do we convince people, not convince, educate? This comes out of our lives. This comes out of our, not just our heads, it's our lives. I'll leave it at that.
So I feel like I feel like that's an important thing to see, especially for artists who are interested in the next round of applications for the IBPOC Touring Network, so they have an idea of what this process is like to get selected. It's competitive, as he mentioned, and what it takes to have the tour happen, the communications between these spaces and the Win in the Leaves team is really imperative. So there is a question. This is question Q&A time. One question online, and I think this is based off of your comment of having workshops and community engagement as a precursor to your performances and exchanges with audiences. What is in store in the future for the IBPOC touring? Will you include community workshops and opportunities for feedback, as per Colette's comment? This is Erin. Anyone want to take up that?
Well, I can start it, but I'm sure Sam would want to say something as the presenter, and given what he's already said, we would love to be able to say to Coco, Mafa, whomever, we want to give you a week in Kitchener. We want to give you a week in Guelph, and we'll let you know well enough in advance because we know the challenges you face, as Coco had said. If is she willing to do that as a vacation? Right? She may say, I'd love to, Charles, but I can't. And Bush will say it honestly. It's, okay, thank you. So I think that is the question, but I have to also point it out. A week means 5 days of hotels, 5 days of eating in restaurants, 5 days of, and that's money. And that's where, sadly, capitalism makes it difficult, particularly the funding. If the funders aren't willing, and they're not so far, to say, we will fund this for this period of time, we're at a loss. Unless a presenter has some big bucks somewhere, and as Sam said, one's going to say that dance is going to make them take over the world, that they can say, we'll throw this in because we want this as well.
I think it's interesting, well, you're going to answer this as well, that the idea of where they're staying, what it takes financially for them to be able to actively be in space. I feel like there's space for a lot of partnerships. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm not part of that side of the team. So
I struggle with this because it's, I don't want to put the burden on artists to pitch me on things, but I have found that a thing that I offer is received differently than a thing that somebody pitches me. But what I do want to say is that I'm always open to overtures of residencies. We pursue what we do at the registry through the lens of art as a human right. And much like food is a human right, and the concept of basic nourishing calories to us is about being a foundational building with stuff in it that people can build on top of. So it offends me when the theater sits empty. That's a problem for my technical director, who's irritated that he hasn't had a chance to do certain upgrades or paint the stage for a while. The only quiet times at the registry are January and July. And that's when I can spare a week. And I don't mean to say, probably a lot of people already know this, but I find a lot of value in introducing emerging artists to the concept of in-kind contribution. So for example, and time is our friend in this case. So January 2027, already talking to an artist about it. January 2028 or July beyond are very much on the table to start building relationships around, I would love to come to Kitchener for a week, because my jazz programmer has, he converted his garage into a little studio with a bunk. It's got a bunkie in his backyard. So if you're cool with living with a jazz musician for a week, I can help you with accommodation. Farah, who runs the Turkish cafe down the road from this jazz musician, could be talked into some food reciprocity, especially if we can talk about sponsorship. Not all of the artifacts of capitalism are bad. Sponsorship is a very good and useful concept. And with more time, we can build on that. What we can also do is I don't have $0. I have, you know, maybe $1,000, between $1,000 and $2,000 that I can give you in real cash money, plus what I'm giving you at the theater can be framed as about a $3,000 in-kind contribution. Now you've got $5,000. Now you're not going to a grant organization and saying, please give me all the money to do this. You can say, I've established a partnership with a venue. They've providing this in kind and this in cash. There's these things in place to cover things like per diem and travel and accommodation. And furthermore, there's already a little bit of interest in the community that we can build on, because one of the big turns that I've made in my career, and not all grant officers are like this, but the only ones that I like to do business with are the ones that understand that we are colleagues, that they are answering to handlers who have objectives, and that if I can set them up for a win, if I can provide them with a dead sexy grant report that's not just writing, that's pictures, that's video that they can put right up on their PowerPoint presentation screen and say, look what we made, look how we leveraged this $5,000 in taxpayer dollars, which is nothing, which is a rounding error when you're looking at, you know, even municipal budgets. It's really not that much. But we can leverage, another good capitalist term, we can leverage these contributions in kind into something that looks like a fulsome engagement. And then the icing on the cake is things like, there's this great event called Tell that Empty Space puts on. We're going to host one in the theater during your residency, and it's going to be a big, you know, we're going to go break bread at some point at a local restaurant. We're going to have some kind of sharing. And you know what? We're not going to have to worry about this dancer in this part with this gear that we need, because what we're going to do is going to be based on who's there and what we have. So let's design a system that cuts off at the knees all of the pointy bits of capitalism that trip us up around scheduling, around stuff, and let's lean into what we have to work with and leverage that.
It sounded like a slow clap was about to happen. There's a element of IBPOC community that you've touched on, that you both, you and Charles have touched on, where art is made in community. The music, the dance, and the theater exists as one at all times, with 3 or 4 generations in the same room creating in the moment. And in a world of capitalism, it's staged for an audience that sits and looks at you like this. But you touched on things like non-traditional or non-typical accommodations. Touched on producers saying, I'm gonna drive you up. You know, and there's a familiarity within the IBPOC community where this is just what happens. I crash by you and I'll take a ride with you, and it's not very, I need my own car and my own bed, and you can't have your dishes in my sink. You know, and I think it's important that that is also part of the IBPOC touring network, because it's in the name. Just wanted to highlight that. We have a question. I'm going to take it to the audience as well, so prep your questions, please. From Erin. What are transferable learnings for various art forms to tour? Example, theater, graphic arts, musicians, etc. Transferable learnings for touring.
I'm sure the artist would want to, and as the presenter, but I think, we started by saying we want to pair these artists. They may or may not know each other. There may be different aesthetic practices involved. There may be different tech requirements that they have. And we do it in a sense of trying to, one, present to communities or engage communities around the incredible richness of arts practices that we have. Second is, even though many of the artists that we select know each other, now they get a chance to be performing together, separately but nonetheless on the same thing. And how do they look at that? There are some issues around that sometimes, which we have to look at in terms of, the difference between technical requirements and whether or not that is the best arrangements. But I think we are really, when I go back to it, and why we started this is, I have seen incredible dance and theater, poetry and music from people whose ancestry comes from Asia, from Southeast Asia, from the Arab world, from the African Black diaspora, from the Latinx world. And I want to I wish I had $1 trillion to get it all out there, because it's incredible. We got Olga Barrio, who comes from Colombia a couple of times during the year, when she's, Charles, I'm going to be in. Do you have space to? I wish we did. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But then if she were to come, who could I put her with? Right? Who could I say, hey, you're doing something now that's Afro-Colombian. Can I put you on with Coco, who's doing something Afro-Caribbean? What does that mean? Right? And how do they exchange with each other? And then how do we then talk to an audience or a community about what you're going to see tonight is this? It may be similar, it may not be at all. But it opens eyes, I hope, and I think that's where I'm hoping we go with this is, I love seeing artwork. And I really do love dance in particular. Theater, okay. Poetry, as you can see, I read earlier. But dances for me are the movement, the embodiment of meaning that the music presents is more, to my view, is more exciting. No offense to theater artists. But it just has that, and I think it also engages audiences more, as you see, because a lot of the dancers do want audience engagement. And that to me is really quite critical.
Coco, your work has instruments, theater, props, projections, dance. I feel like that's multidisciplinary, and voiceover. Based on the question that asked the transferable learnings for theater, graphic arts, and musicians, can you speak to what those transferable learnings can be?
Testing. Transferable learnings. Ooh. Well, I know I learned a lot. I would say, yeah, the transferable learnings, I guess for me, because I have an intergenerational cast, they brought their own leadership skills to the situation that was transferable from other aspects. I would probably say, what was transferable would be that we didn't have to improvise, but in some ways we did have to improvise, and we had to problem solve on the go. We had to engineer some things. I would say, and I think one transferable skill is just our people skills. Wholeheartedly, because nobody got upset every challenge that we faced, we quickly pivoted. It was always a calm conversation. For example, if I had to work with Zara or you on the lighting on the day of the tech, what's the point of being frustrated? We have to get the thing done, and it's we have to work through it. Do you like this, Coco? What about this? No, I would like this here. Oh yeah, that's wonderful. Like, you just have to pivot and make the thing work. Um, and again, that's a major transferable skill, right? So it's more than just having grace. You have to have patience. You got to know how to talk to people. You got to know how to problem solve very quickly, and then you have to move and quickly pivot and adapt and get to going back to the performance. So that people will be stressed and will freak out if they don't have people management skills. That comes from me in my everyday work life. I just bring it into the space. So I don't know. So the musicians had to help each other with specific things in each venue. And if someone had the engineering experience, like Gobina, like he would able to quickly adapt and fix something very quickly. So, um, yeah, I would just say each individual of the cast is bringing in their own skill sets from wherever they have them to make the thing work, because we were problem solving constantly.
Thank you. While we, does anyone? Yeah. Oh, she's ready. To somebody, DT. As you get this mic, I tend, and Sam knows this, I usually give a speech right before I stage manager show to remind everyone that anything that happens here is not personal. We just want to get the job done together. I usually precursor it with that. Yes, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, I'm one of the visual artists who is exhibiting my work here, and that exhibition actually was originally exhibited at the Women's Art Association. I would like to talk a little bit about the topic because it's kind of related to this topic. Because my work, my feminist work was censored by my local public library, so I did that exhibition. Now I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to exhibit the work here, and then actually I'm bringing this exhibition to Olola, where the censorship took place next week as part of the Contact Photography Festival. Then I was chatting with Victoria. I said, oh, somehow it becomes kind of a touring exhibition, and I'm so interested in this topic and learn so much. So I have one question and one comment. So I just wonder if this IBPOC touring network would expand opportunities to visual artists. And if not, I understand. But also, I would like to make comments. Your work is so important. I'm thinking it's like set up a model for other networks who work for IBPOC artists should do like similar work for different types of artists. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comment and your question. We're not capable of touring of visual artwork. We don't have the relationships with galleries, nor do we have the curatorial capacity on our team to look at visual art and say, hey, here's what we would highly recommend. It is unfortunate, because I've dealt with some of the public art galleries in the past, and they do have their challenges. I've dealt with through Ontario Galleries Association and CARFAC, Ontario. And one of those organizations should be taking that up, to be honest. Years ago when Dimitra Christakos was responsible for public art galleries of Ontario, she was taking that up. I don't know where it's gone since she moved back to Thunder Bay. But she was challenging the visual arts community on their leadership, on what was on their walls, about what was on their walls and how it got there, and who that was speaking to. And also working with curators, emerging curators, to develop their knowledge, their skills as both curatorial expertise, but also what does it mean to actually curate within a public art gallery, which is a very different thing. So those are, I'd love it if the IBPOC model that we're doing, focusing, and we say performing arts, whatever that means. So we're open to theater, but our priority has been around dance, largely because theater has more opportunities than dance does. Dancers, you're happy if you get 2 nights in a row. And the likelihood is you're not going to perform that work for maybe a couple of years, right? Whereas theater goes in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Gallery work, visual arts, stays up for a month, maybe more. Dancers, in and out. Next, in and out. Next, in and out. Next. And it's very stressful. So that's why we are focusing on dance, is how do we get these amazing artists more security in their work? And our hope is that through working in, communities, that those communities will get more knowledge, not just about dance from a diverse community, but also art from a diverse community as well.
Charles, thank you for your question. Do we have any other questions in the audience? Yes, to Lily. And while you get the mic over, I would love to challenge folks to follow this model and adapt it to their needs and have objective adjudicators look at IBPOC work for what it is and what it needs to say, not what the people they assume want to see and hear, and also to challenge using non-traditional spaces, because that's also where we exist.
Oh my gosh, so many things. Like what you just said was the thought that was also burning in my mind, and I'm trying to choose which of the questions I want to ask. I think I want to can I just piggyback off of something you just said, and that what I have found to be very interesting with regards to the network and the audiences that seem to come out to the network, to the performances, is actually maybe not just who comes out, who, as for myself, as someone who works in a venue, is part of the venue space, but also is an audience member and also is a performer. There's an aspect of me that wants the artists to be exposed to so many different people within the community. But at the same time, there's a part of me that wants our own community to show up for our community. And so I feel that there's tension there, in the sense that the network is to expose and to be exposed. But at the same time, if our own community isn't showing up, we can't be advocates for those artists and for the artwork as well. And so I don't know, it's not a question, it's just a thought that's in my mind every time I participate in the audience. And yes, it's dance, but it's also us, it's our people. Where are they? I'd just like to see more of that. And I do understand that part of the mission is to be in communities where the artists may not have had opportunities to be in, and so that can be part of the challenge. But I do believe there's some work to be done there. One of my questions also was, can you speak to any intentional opportunities or ways for the folks within the network? Can you share how they are able to connect outside of when some artists might be paired at a show, or when they're participating in a show. Are there intentional opportunities for education, for artists to observe one another between groups, even to create and collaborate, or even debrief after a particular presentation? I'm wondering if that is ever done intentionally, and that comes from the perspective of trying to understand what other types of learnings are happening beyond the experience of presenting at a venue.
Yes. Yes, I will say one of the learning, like in terms of exchanging between artists with this network, was so amazing because of Yvonne. I was partner with an artist, Yvonne, the Tiger Prince. I think it's Tiger Princess. Yes. Interesting enough is that after we did the performance and everything that was done, she recommended me for 4 gigs after that. So that already, it wasn't just about, that's why I was like, for me, the collaboration of how this network, how the touring was putting together, it wasn't only just artist to artist, but also as a community, and when I got the call and then they were asking, oh, are you Muffin? And then I said yes, and then they asked me to come and do a performance for them, and then they told me who recommended me. So then even she reached out, I was like, okay, thank you, which means the network, it's, in a way, I think it came with that idea of thinking beyond. Yes.
Congratulations. Yeah, I think, well, it gave me an opportunity to meet another company. Another company was presenting in Montreal. So yes, Kieta. Yes. So we missed their performance, but they ran and made sure they saw our performance. I thought that was the sweetest thing. And then also collaborating with Sashar for 2 of our dates. So yeah, it was, again, being able to meet other artists, have conversations with them, build a rapport and a relationship with them. That's beneficial to this network as well. When it comes to just and just performing and leaving, right? So that's important. Where this is going to lead, I don't know, because there's possibilities. There could have been someone in the audience. They may reach out to me after, so.
Oh, sorry, I just meant to say that another success was that through the process, somebody was in register, and then they did us in Aurelia. So we did a show in February also. Yes.
Yeah, 2 things. One is you're in a forum bringing different artists together, bringing different people together, which is what Sapamo has been doing since its start. What we do with the touring network, the video showcasing is not just come see videos. We invite all the artists that we select, right, to come to a day. They get paid to come to the day, as I mentioned. We also ask artists to present other artists' work. So when we say to Kevin, no, just present, no, we don't want you to present Kasha Dance. You can talk forever about Kasha. I want you to present Sashar Zarif's work, Tiger Princess's work, Nova Bhattacharya's work, the Kala Collector's work. You talk about them. Someone else will talk about your work. So what does that do? It requires the person doing that presentation to look at those videos, to read what the artist has said. They probably know the artist anyway. But then they have to articulate the practice that the artist is putting out there, In other words, they have to be able to understand it well enough to say, I can talk about this work, and I can do so comfortably, right? So it takes the individual artist away from just the rah self-promotion to a colleague of mine is presenting this work, which means that the work I'm doing has got broader understanding. And I say that not just if it might be, let's say, it's a Shah Zarif with a Mafa, South Africa, versus a Persian Sufi artist, or in addition to a Persian. It even happens amongst us as artists of African descent. You know, that my practice as an artist is very North American. So it's very much out of the lived experience of black bodies in North America, very different from where Martha's coming from, very different from where Coco's coming from, very different from where Julia or Kasha Dance are coming from. And so how do we begin to break that apart so audiences just don't say, oh, Afro-diasporic, we can invite everybody in. Well, I've been invited to some places where people get quite shocked. Look, that's exactly what we were thinking of. Because they didn't think beyond the fact that, you know, they just assume we're going to come in with some djembe and, you know, we're going to do, I mean, and we're not. That's not what we do. And so, again, it's about how do we articulate the differences amongst us becomes really important. And that's why we ask artists to present other artists' work.
Thank you for your questions. We have like 5 minutes left, but I want to close off this deep discussion that's necessary, especially for aspiring artists that are looking for a place to be and for venues that are looking for work to present, and for Charles, who's looking for the variety of IBPOC work to be presented. I'd like to close off with the statement of, what does it mean to be tour ready? We heard a lot of what it means to be on tour. What does it mean? A little one-liner. I know it's hard to make that a one-liner, but what does it mean?
Have an idea that is developed. Have a concept that and a piece that is developed and rehearsed, because you can't apply for this without having something already developed and just say, oh, I'm just going to have an idea and put it on screen for 5 minutes. No, the video is very short to convey what the whole concept of what your work is. So if you don't have that finished and ready to go, then you will not, and again, that's your visual resume for someone as a presenter to see that your work is tour ready. So come with a developed work, come with a developed explanation of that work in your own words, because you're not relying on someone else to tell your stories.
I would say forget about sleep and job security, because you won't need them where you're going. I think prep is critically important. I was just joking, everybody. I actually was born without a sense of humor. I would say, yeah, plan, prepare, but, you know, no plan survives contact with the real world. Adapt. That is how life has evolved on this planet, is by adapting and changing. And I'm a theater guy. In particular sketch comedy, and I didn't really do much improv, but the one bit that I took from improv was yes and, right? And you spoke about this, Coco, about, you know, if you can't get out of it, get into it. If you know, let go of control of the idea that you thought how this was going to go, and instead go in with your full problem-solving apparatus activated, and insist on having a good time with it. It's just, you can do it. But, you know, just enjoy the ride.
Yes. I think like I will say, as an artist, we're never ready, because we can never say that, okay, you know what, this is I can never be pleased with what I'm doing, you know, so the art will never be ready. So I will say that have an idea that you trust, that when you present that trust to a presenter, they're going to trust that you're going to deliver something to the audience to be able to connect with you. And then that's all. Once you build that connection, because after you finish it, you're still going to, but ish, you know, but ish. So it can never be. So have that trust, and then boom, would you go?
I would agree with everything that has been said, but I think I'm gonna, for the artist, her, him, selves, their self. When I say, tour ready, it means that you have your performance ready. Whether you have to go to others, understudies, or whatever. I was surprised last year in going back to artists to say, I'd like to set up a tour with you, and they say, oh, my other artist isn't ready. Well, then you're not ready. I can't say to Sam, hey, I'm going to send this group to you, and they don't know who's going to perform. No. So that's a responsibility on the artist's part to actually, when they say they're tour ready, it's not so much the tech writer, although that is important, no doubt about it. But it is the fact that they have the work, that the people involved in the work are ready to roll with it, that they can be adaptable because they are going to be in different locations. We don't want just, one person going to one venue and that's it. It's a tour, right? So you go to more than one space. I think we've had both of you go to 2 to 3 spaces. And to me, that, that gives them resources financial to help them present their work and to grow as an artist organization. And for us, it's kind of like, all right, we sent it, I think, 6 artist groups last year. And if we're going to consider residency, we might have to send less. And that does mean, we need understanding and community around that if we're going to offer that opportunity to say to one group, we can offer you a week here. It means we're probably going to say no to a bunch of other groups who might just be ready for that opportunity, but we just don't have the capacity. So we need greater understanding amongst ourselves, I think, as artists around tour ready means that we have our company in place. The video makes it really clear that the art is there. Plus, we do go online. We look at websites, and we look at history and that kind of stuff. So we're pretty sure that when we select an artist, they are ready. But as I say, sometimes we do get the surprise and say, well, my other artist, that person's not ready right now. And I say, well, then you're not. And that's disappointing because to me, that's kind of like, well, why did you submit it? Right? What you just took? We lost somebody else because you submitted something that you weren't prepared to deliver on. That hurts community, right? And it makes me feel, if that artist applies again, what do I do? Should I trust it? Even though I might know the person very well. Tough spot to be in.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Can we give them a little hand, please? Give yourselves a hand. Thank you all for your great contributions. And hopefully, we will continue growing. All right. Thank you.